Everyone, my name is David Mata, and the environmental issue I decided on was the global water crisis. And this is a crisis that affects everyone in this planet, all living organisms. And the reason I picked it was because I'm a go green kind of guy. I've always tried to preserve water because it's a necessity for all life on Earth. You can go 3 weeks without food, but you can only go 3 days without water. That's like a basic survivalist fact. And a big question, what is so important about water? Well, water is needed by every living organism, plants, animals, humans. It's a necessity. You can't have life. Background information about Earth. The planet is 75% water. And the crazy part, it's crazy, only 2% is drinkable. That's insane. Only 2%. And okay, now let's get started. What is the global water crisis? Well, the global water crisis is the lack of fresh water in an area where water scarcity comes from high demand and low supply of water. I got this information from a movie on Netflix. It's called Tapped. It's very interesting. You should check it. This movie will inform you all about like everything that I'm talking about on a movie. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing I talk about in my paper is it's about one of the planet's most important source of fresh water, and it's a victim of human destructive behavior. The important source of water that I'm talking about comes from the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes is 5 lakes that are shared between the United States and Canada. The importance of the lakes is as big as the lakes themselves. Lakes' vast inland freshwater seas provide water for consumption, transportation, habitat, and power. Created by ancient glaciers, these Great Lakes have become important not only to the US, but the whole world. Over the years, the lakes have become victim of pollutants that include toxins, sewage disposal, and air pollution. It is vital to keep the lakes clean because we use all the resources that it has to offer. The lake is not only important to the country, but to the individuals who use it for water, food, and fun. The lake provides tasty fish and fresh water, but pollutants compromise our consumption of both because toxins can transform our food, water, and fun into a hazard. According to the University of Michigan, over 20% of the world's freshwater supply comes from the Great Lakes. I mean, wow, that's a lot. Alright, let's get started on the Great Lakes. One of the toxins that are contaminating they are the heavy metals and pesticides. The toxins have many effects, and they include reducing the water quality, contaminating soils, and damaging the lake ecosystems. This damage produces harmful repercussions on the fish and wildlife stocks and to the humans surrounding the Great Lake regions. The toxins originated from decades of industrial, municipal, and non-point source pollutions. Toxic metals like mercury and copper or some organic toxins like PCB are responsible for the pollution. These toxins build up in the bottom of the lake and can be resuspended by storms, ship propellers, and bottom-dwelling organisms, causing humans and ecological health concerns. These toxins in the water have made it difficult over the years to make it into sustainable drinkable water. In some parts of the Great Lakes, it has become impossible to reverse the damage, causing for long-term damage towards obtaining fresh water. And this is important because we must attend these problems. They affect everyone and everything around it. Here's a picture of metals in the lakes. They're visible. They're pretty visible. Pollution was the sewage disposal pollution, and the sewage disposal pollution is very important because sewage is used by almost everyone in the United States. One of our biggest sources of water used for sewage comes from the Great Lakes, running through the lakes and used by millions of people. More than 24 billion gallons of combined untreated sewage and stormwater is dumped to the Great Lakes each year. Bacteria and viruses in untreated sewage pose a significant health risk and are a major cause of Great Lakes beach closings and swimming advisories. All these sewage pollutants become a hazard not only to the ecosystem but humans as well. The sewage leaks cause the lack of nutrients to plants, affecting our food chain. Toxins from the sewage also cause organisms to become exposed to these toxins, which will later end up in humans. Well, here's some pictures of sewage disposal into the lakes, and I also put a Simpsons picture here because in the movie they also talked about untreated sewage water into the lakes or any contamination. An easy solution for this are creating better and more reliable sewage systems that will not leak. If not the biggest problem, it's the air pollution. And air pollution will travel from hundreds of miles away and end up in the Great Lakes. Air pollution ends up in the lakes due to toxins in rain and snow. Air pollution has as much as 90% of some toxins loading to the Great Lakes. And it's believed that 90% of some toxins loading in the Great Lakes are from airborne deposition. And the air deposition has some effects as metallic toxins in the sewage disposal. And this air pollution will affect the food chain and potentially harm humans. Swimming in the lakes with full of toxins is very unsafe and can cause rashes, diarrhea to humans, or even worse, turn it into a non-drinkable water, which we're short of. Due to the hydraulical cycle, water that evaporates into the atmosphere will come down as rain or snow containing lakes toxins. These toxins can end up all around the Great Lakes. As stated before, any toxins in the lake is bad in the long run because we are in a water crisis and our biggest provider of fresh water are the Great Lakes. And these pollutants can come from across the world. One example is China's pollution. China's pollution reaches all the way to the United States. Here's another picture of pollutants. And okay, we talked about the biggest provider of water, but what about the biggest consumer of water? Our biggest consumer of water is agriculture. And agriculture use of water in the United States accounts for nearly 80% of the nation's water. And then the other 20% for other uses. So 80%, that's huge. And we pollute the water due to irrigation. Agriculture is used for irrigation, pesticide and fertilizer application, crop cooling, and frost control. Irrigation of cropland can increase the possibility of fertilizers and pesticides that will infiltrate into the groundwater or run off into nearby streams. Along with the irrigation of crops, the farmers that have livestock must provide clean water to the livestock to drink. And even though irrigation has helped by increasing the production of food, the price is becoming too great with the demand of water. We know the problem, but what can we do to fix it? One simple solution is reduce water and control it. It's easy as that, but simple enough, but harder said than done. There are many ideas on how to fix this, like improving irrigation, scheduling, and crop-specific irrigation management. These ideas can help conserve water and energy and decrease cost of growers. Okay, another problem, it's political and social inertia. The problem is not a lot of people are informed about the water crisis, and politicians are not informing the people about it either. So it doesn't help. And here's a picture of that some people are trying to act towards the politicians, saying that they're not doing anything about it and they're the cause of it. Well, a simple solution is informing yourself about it, and politicians to tell everyone about the water crisis. I know sometimes it might not go their way, but as long as we're informed that there's a problem, there are many solutions toward it. And the biggest problem of them all is one of the most long-term problems we face right now, and it's global warming. There is little technology that can help us defend against the power of nature. Global warming has caused the planet to become warmer place, making it much needed glaciers to melt at alarming rates. From the planet's 2% drinkable water, almost 70% of it is snow and ice, and 30% is groundwater, and less than 0.5 is surface water that comes from the lakes, rivers, etc. And less than 0.05 is in the atmosphere. Okay, so not only will the supply of water increase, but the ocean will rise at alarming rates as well. Global warming is also a big part of droughts and causes the droughts to become prolonged. As you know, In our nation, California and Texas have record-breaking droughts that affect the water supply. Droughts have economic, environmental, and social impacts. Economically, it affects the farmers, environmentally, it affects the wildlife, and socially, it affects the people. Drought or warmer weather will increase our thirst for water. This will increase into even higher demand for water. What does global warming have to do with us? Global warming has everything to do with humans, since we are the ones responsible for the climate changes. Human activities such as burning fossil fuels and deforestation is a primary foundation to global warming. When we burn fossil fuels such as coal and petroleum, we release a heat-trapping greenhouse gas, and deforestation releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and trees are needed to absorb the extra CO2 from the atmosphere. This means more CO2 stays in the atmosphere, trapping more heat. And I have pictures of some global warming effects such as the greenhouse effect that I was talking about, and the glaciers, they're melting, and droughts. Some people believe that it does not matter what the problem is or where it originated, as long as there's some kind of technology to reverse it. Well, this was my counter argument, and it can be true for short-term but not long-term solutions, such as this machine is called the Water FX machine, and this machine is capable of turning salt water into drinkable water by using the power of the sun. And I have here more pictures of an aquifer, and this aquifer is like a water bank that you can store water for long periods of time. And the picture of the bottom left is an atmospheric water generator. It actually does what the name says. It gathers up the water in the atmosphere and cleans it to make it to clean, drinkable water. And there's some ideas about modifying plants into turning salt water into fresh water. And for my rebuttal, I use the obligations to future generations. This is familiar to all of you. We've talked about this in class. And in my opinion, we do have an obligation to future generations, and this has to be the biggest reason why we should take care of our planet and conserve our water, protect it, because for our children or just for everyone else, if I received the chance to interview Professor Heath, whose most alluring topic is the water crisis, and she knows a great deal about it. She states that future generations do not exist, so it's hard to find a direct moral duty, but there's an indirect obligation to future obligations. She believes that if we behave correctly now, then future generations will live well in relation to them if we live well now. Professor Heath also states that people are caught up in capitalistic way of thinking that infects, and my translation to her was that people think of water as a commodity and not as an important basic need for life. And she also mentions that the United States suffers from influenza with no concern about water because people think there is always more. And I read that the United States uses the most water, and she makes a compelling point about the way people believe it's simple as turn on the faucet, but simply knowing that you have access to more. But more does not always give right to use as much as you want. I agree with Professor Heath, using only as much as we need. That concludes my paper, and the solutions that we should pay more attention to are the solutions for the Great Lakes, and also we should control and improve our agricultural use, since it's the one that consumes the most water. And the only way to get close to eliminating the water crisis are long-term solutions. Long-term solutions proposed in this paper should be taken into consideration for future generations that I believe we have a direct obligation to. We have to remember this is a national crisis, but a world crisis as well. The crisis is extremely severe in other countries. We are the country that uses the most water in the world, so if we decrease and use our water efficiently, we will definitely decrease the impact of the crisis. And yeah, that concludes everything, and everyone have a nice summer. Thanks.